Alrighty, brother. So this is Max. We met at Fit for Service Sedona in September of 2024. Now it is end of February 2025. And we just finished up Fit for Service Malibu, which is the last dance, Aubrey's last dance. That's supposedly. We'll see if it stays that way. But we've been having some conversations and having some fun together, and just wanted to share a very short little crystallization of some of the themes and some of the things we've been talking about with you all. Share some of Max's life story, some of his journey of transformation and healing, and leave that as kind of a beacon for others on the path, other young men, other young people our age. You know, I'm 25, you're 23, who are doing this sort of work of healing and integration and waking up and growing up and cleaning up. So that's our intention with this podcast.
Beautiful. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. We're here in sunny Los Angeles. Yeah. This morning at breakfast, you were telling me a little bit about your story growing up and your past, which I actually didn't know anything about until this morning. I just known you as a homie in 2020, whatever. So I would love for you to share some of that story, and maybe at the end of that story, we can go into some of the things of how you process that experience and how you've used that as a alchemical experience to get to where you are now.
Yeah, and I can break it up into kind of chapters, so we have like the overlaying theme without going into the details. But the simplest one is being born. That's like the peaceful phase for most people, at least. And so I was born in Minden, Nevada, and everything was all good. I mean, nothing to complain about, you know. When I was 3, my parents moved to Boise, Idaho, which is where the peace time started shifting to the chapter of kind of a war zone. And my mom tried to convert my dad to Christianity, and he didn't fuck with it at all. And so it caused this big rift and eventually divorce that lasted a year, where the house was literally a war zone, and it was just the dense energy was sticky and spiky and always just really uncomfortable to be around. And especially as a child, you're like, well, this is my fault, so I need to co-regulate the environment to make sure everybody's happy, to minimize the potential for an outburst. So it was like, my fault, war zone, need to make sure everybody's okay. Let me please others, because that's how I stay safe. So that program was embedded quick, which is obviously manifested into people pleasing for a lot of people. The war zone then shifted to kind of this brainwashing period where my mom took the initiative to tell me that my father was Satan, that he was the devil, he was the incarnation of all that is evil in the world, and we needed to escape. We needed to escape and get out of there because my life depended on it. And since I was a mama's boy, as most kids are from about 1 to 8, I was totally on board. She sold me. And what ended up happening is once they got divorced, I was doing a week on with my mom, week on with my dad, back and forth over and over. So it was like this rinse and repeat Groundhog Day of fall in love with my mom, enjoy that time, then have to be ripped out of that beautiful heaven world into hell, where it was horrible with my dad, just like, this, when is this going to end, when is this going to end, when is this going to end? And then towards the end of the week, he would win me back and I would start liking him. We'd watch movies together, and then Sunday comes, repeat. And so it created this world of extreme polarity, an extreme, just swinging the pendulum from one end to the other. And it's caused me to kind of do that with my own mood in life, where it doesn't feel, my emotional home is swinging from one pole to the other, not sitting somewhere in the middle or sitting on the one sadness end or one happiness end. It's this shifting of it, which is, I think, awesome. I totally love it now. In the beginning, when you're getting like, you know, co-regulated to it, you're like, what the fuck is going on? I'm happy one moment, this sucks the next. But now I'm just like, it's part of the ride. So eventually she told me that God had spoken to her and said, hey, you need to take Max and you need to leave, flee the country, and go to Brazil for the rest of your lives. And this is the chapter that I would title Becoming Lost. Becoming Lost. So one day she picked me up from school. We were supposed to go visit my half-brother, her son from the previous marriage. My dad thought nothing of it. And then I gave him a call and spoke to him one last time saying, I love you. Like, I'll talk to you soon. I'll see you next week. And that was the last he heard from me for 2 years. So we disappeared from the face of the map.
Wow.
And my mom didn't have my passport. And so my dad was holding on to that, which meant me and her couldn't get through borders legally. So we had to travel through horseback, boat, bribing, pickup trucks, all these different facets.
Horseback.
Yeah, the horseback one was crazy. That was the last one
Crazy.
from whichever the country is before Nicaragua into Nicaragua. And you know what's more interesting? The guys going back home, because they dropped us off and went back home, they got shot on the way back, shot and killed. Yeah. Yeah. And I heard about that and I was crying because I like the dudes. Like they were really nice guys. They helped us out. But my mom just told me one day randomly. So it's not a proven fact, but she did tell me. So
Whoa.
who knows? Um, but after a year of traveling through these Central American countries, we got to Nicaragua. She ran out of money, which meant that we couldn't go anywhere. So we had to hunker down and move in with this family that we met through the church. And we basically integrated into their life, lived in their house, ate with them at the meal times. I went to school. Like they became brothers and sisters, moms and dads. And it was beautiful. It was a great life. Like it was awesome. I had a good time.
So crazy.
It was like the purest wild tribal growing up that could ever possibly happen, which is sick. It was like being reverted back to tribal times,
Yeah.
which I think I can give a lot of gratitude for because of like how tight and I like to be with my people and my tribe and how I value the community. So it certainly brought a lot of beauty into my life. But to finish out that chapter of being lost,
you said that house had 3 walls, no fourth wall.
Yeah,
tin
yeah.
roof.
Yeah, so you'd imagine 3 walls, sheet metal roof with like 2 or 3 layers, and then the third wall is just open to the environment. So it's literally, I mean, you are immersed in nature, which is beautiful, but at the same time, you're not protected from nature. So it's an interesting juxtaposition. Um, and then one day, I'm sitting at the house, and I only used to draw two things as a kid. I would draw a heart with wings, and then I would draw like a little geometric flower, and I was drawing it over and over and over again. And these white dudes walk up to the house, which is not something you see. I was the only white person within like 100 square miles. And so it was like, what the fuck's going on? My mom had been at the market, hadn't come back. And they asked if Max Sean Alcalde was there, and I started freaking out. I grabbed the dad of the family. I was like, don't let them take me, don't let them take me. And eventually they had to, and they brought me to the car, and she's sitting in there freaking out. She is obviously, since me and her are so enmeshed at that point, we're almost one being that like whatever she's feeling, I'm gonna feel it.
For sure.
And so that was when my whole body just tightened up into this ball. And on the two hour drive back to Managua, I had to have them stop like 6 or 7 times because I was dry heaving, not throwing up, but just having this wretched like octopus in my stomach, like pain. And it's exactly what happened during my ayahuasca ceremony as well. Only dry heave, didn't throw up, and I felt like I was that little kid again. It's fascinating.
Maybe like a reliving.
Exactly what it was, I think. So we got back to the police station. They ripped her away from me, and I was screaming, and she was telling me to fight back, like run away. And I couldn't do shit. I was 8 at the time. I got taken when I was 6, got found when I was 8, and they threw me in an orphanage that night. Threw her to women's prison for 4 years.
In Nicaragua?
No, they brought her back to Texas, and she went to women's prison there. But I spent the night in the orphanage, got taken out the next morning, cried the whole entire day until they were able to bribe me with McDonald's and the toys that they were offering at the time, and that's what stopped the crying. But the way I think about it is that was an emotion that needed to be let out through crying, that every time I cry now, I'm like pulling tears out of that reservoir of emotion and draining it because it needs to be let out. It's like steam in a crock pot.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so I got taken back. My whole neighborhood was outside when I got home, like they were waiting for me. This was on national news. If you look up my name on Google, it still comes up, all the articles from the FBI and CNN and
Really?
Idaho.gov, all of it.
This was, and you pulled back up to Boise, Idaho, and everyone's lined up on the street.
Yeah, they all had fucking candles and shit.
What was the story that they told? Like, mom kidnaps kid?
Yeah, mom went crazy, kidnapped son. Father is heartbroken, looking for his lost son. And so my dad spent virtually all of his money until the point of almost bankruptcy, trying to find me, hiring investigators, CIA agents, all this thing. And you know, eventually he did. But the hard part is when I got back, instead of what should have happened, which is father and son reintegrating, he had to
Right.
work, literally for us to have a house. So I had to spend time at friends' houses or have my dad's girlfriend at the time, soon to be stepmom, watch me, which was cool at the time, but it wasn't doing the healing necessary for a child that had just gone through that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also got stuck with at least a dozen therapists, and I could tell none of them gave a fuck about me. They were just doing it because it was their job. So instead of going to a therapist and learning to speak your truth, I learned to go to a therapist and intentionally close off my truth. So it taught me not to speak,
Right.
which I only discovered recently as well.
Really.
Yeah. And so all in all, after that, it was like being in a bad trip. Like being back home was in a place I wasn't supposed to be, that was hellish and it was confining, and it was not the reality that I was supposed to be a part of according to the story that I was told as a kid.
And that deep programming that's in the body.
Deep,
Right.
deep. And so I was always closed off and restricted and always trying to make friends, but nobody really fucked with me when I got back because, you know, they had grown up together and I just dropped out of the picture for a while. And so I had trouble making friends growing up, had friends on and off. I was a total douchebag. I was a dick. I had no idea how to speak with people, speak to women, much less. I had a fractured relationship with the feminine. Literally couldn't even talk to girls. I could text them all I wanted, but in person, I'd be fucking choking. So it was just this section of being lost again, really. It was this section of closing myself off, putting up my shield to the world and saying, I don't want to have a relationship with you because everything I ever loved was taken from me and you can fuck off.
Mm-hmm.
And that eventually led into serious substance use, which was a ton of cocaine, ton of molly, smoking all the time, heavy drinking from like 17 to 19 or 17 to 21, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all with the point of actually finding safe love and actually being in a place where I didn't have to think about my problems. I could be present, I could be myself,
Mm-hmm.
and there was nothing wrong until it wore off, obviously. And then the world came crashing in.
Uh-huh.
So I, looking back now, am so deeply grateful that I got to go through that addiction phase when I didn't have responsibilities in life and when I had a house to stay at, which my parents eventually kicked me out. So I didn't actually have a house, but for most of the time I did. And I'm glad I got to go through it early because people now who decide to go through those phases like 21 to 28 or 30 even, it's like, man, that's fucking up your trajectory big time. So I'm deeply grateful, deeply grateful that it all happened the way it did.
Mm-hmm.
It was just obviously difficult to get through.
Yeah.
I joined the army after I got out of high school. College didn't seem like an option because I knew I would just keep drinking and doing more drugs, and then continue to drink and do drugs in the army. So it really didn't even do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I had a sales job for the past 3 years, living in 8 different states in the past 3.5-ish years, knocking on people's doors, trying to sell them solar, and really learning to conquer my social anxiety. That's really what it taught me. It taught me how to communicate with people and be liked and make friends,
Mm-hmm.
which was something that I couldn't do before. I could not do before.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was all these puzzle pieces forming together that were just building me up into more of who I am and shedding away more of what I wasn't.
Yeah. Wow. It almost feels like it happened to someone else in the sense after like meeting you and hearing about this because I think of the amount that you've been able to alchemize these experiences, and I feel like they are of course a part of your story, a part of your journey, and I mean it's why you're here today, it's why you are the person that you are. But I think, you know, some people you can't have some people have gone through something like this, you can't get through a sentence without hearing about it, or it's what defines them, it's what defines their life, it's all they talk about.
Yeah.
They're living under that, the weight of that experience. um and you know, if you had told me you had had a perfect, you know, perfect childhood, and of course the modern world is the modern world, but if you had told me you had had like, you know, an everyday upbringing and at one point you woke up to the world being on fire and you went on a journey of healing or growth or spirituality, you know, I would have been like, sure, you know.
Yeah.
So the amount that you've been able to, I think, tap into your joy for life and just like an expandedness and overcome that fear and that restriction.
Mm,
I think it's just unbelievable,
mm,
to see. So it's super inspirational to me,
yeah,
to see that.
yeah, thank you. And one thing that just coming up for me right now, as a child, going out of like the known world, out of a first world country in a middle class community,
Yeah.
going out and seeing more of the world and
Yeah.
seeing actually how the world is
Yeah.
also showed me how I am. It took me out of this small little snow globe of perfection
Hmm.
and safety,
Hmm.
and it showed me, hey, there's actually danger in the world. There's actually people that are only eating rice and beans for dinner every night. So it was like a journey for my physical body, but also my psyche to go out and see, as like a godlike being as we all are, saying, oh, this is actually me too, not just this.
Hmm.
All of this is me, which allowed me to ask myself deeper questions because I knew that there was more in the physical world. And I intuitively came to the conclusion that there must be more in the spiritual world and in the mental world as well.
Hmm.
So it allowed me to start asking these questions and start seeking out knowledge online and start using psychedelics as a personal form of therapy because nothing was working. And so I would take these psychedelics.
When was that?
16 or 17, the first time I did LSD.
Okay.
I was pretty hooked on it.
That was one of the main ones.
Yeah, LSD is the main one for me. And I would like black out my room, like put blankets on all the like windows, make it as dark as possible, and just lay in bed with a soundtrack and a journal and just go in. And I had one journey where I drew and expressed this idea that in the beginning there was one consciousness, and I knew nothing about this. I'd never seen it anywhere online.
Really?
I drew like this guy, and he's looking over his shoulder, and his hands are behind his back, and one hand is white, like light energy, and one hand is dark, like negative energy. And he's looking to try and see which hand is which, and they're both the same hand, and they're looking at each other in the back as if they don't know each other. You see what I'm saying? So I drew this and I was like, holy fuck.
What the fuck?
I started looking around at everything and I'm like, I created this. Like, I did
Yes.
this. I'm listening to Pink Floyd right now. I
Yes.
created this.
Yes.
This is me.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my fucking God. Like, I'm God, but also everybody else is God. And I'm everybody else and everybody else is me. It was like, whoa. And then
Holy
it was crazy. I was journaling all this and just like taking videos of myself, like I figured it out. Holy fuck!
I've had that exact same shit.
Right? It's crazy. And you just know. It's
You
this
just know.
deep knowing that can't be disturbed by anything.
Yeah.
And eventually what ended up happening is I went on a hike in the hills and there was fires at the time, so it was smoky as fuck. And I smoked weed on this hill. Couldn't see 100 feet away from me because it was so smoky. So I had this light trip and it was beautiful for the first 4 hours, and then I went to this mountain and smoked and it turned into hell. It like literally dry mountains in Idaho. Not a thing in sight but smoke. It literally looked like hell. And so I'm walking down
Did you
the
see
mountain.
fire too, like the glow.
I wasn't tripping visually, other than like some small things where I would think there's a bunch of FBI agents in the hills looking at me. So I'd see red and blue like cop lights
Oh shit.
speckled around staring at me. And so I'm like, I would start walking and I'd be like, no, I gotta run. Then I'd start running and I was stuck in a loop. I never thought I would
Oh.
leave the mountain.
Dude.
And so, yeah, it was just this
They call that the hell
juxtaposition.
in Buddhism,
Mm-hmm. And so I eventually ended up getting home and I sat in my room and I literally turned into a shit that was on the ground for eternity. I was just this shit and I was watching time pass and just sitting there like, oh my God, like I couldn't move, could
Yeah,
hardly
dude.
breathe. I was disgusted with myself.
Yeah.
And eventually I just passed out and then I woke up, went in the shower, and I'm like, holy fuck, I'm alive.
Thank fuck, yeah.
So psychedelics have played a massive role in looking at things differently and asking myself deeper questions, and also going into environments where a lot of the kids I was hanging out with were hanging out and thinking like, this is not it.
Mm.
This is not it. These aren't the people I want to be with.
Mm-hmm.
They're not talking about the things that actually matter to me.
Mm-hmm. I feel that.
And so it caused me to say, fuck college. I'm going to go to join the army and go on my own hero's adventure. And I continue to use psychedelics throughout the whole journey and continue to journal and just see, like, checking in with myself. Like, what am I feeling? If I can be honest with myself, what am I feeling and why am I feeling this? And looking back on all these journals, I had so much pain and escapism from the present moment. My relationship with the present moment
Yeah.
was like my relationship with my mom. It was ripped
Hmm.
away from me, and I never thought I could get it back. And I almost hated it because it betrayed me, because it painted this grand illusion of beauty and heaven and safety, and she literally said, finding us would be like finding a needle in a haystack. That's what she would always tell me. And then we were found, and I was reverted back into hell. And so then God,
Ooh, that trust.
my resentment towards God, the trust, gone, shattered, fucking demolished. And so my relationship with God at that moment, in the present moment in life, became,
Fuck you.
yeah. And when Aubrey said yesterday, all we're trying to do is heal our resentment to God, I was like,
Yeah, I saw that hit you actually.
whoa. And so that's where I am now. And
Yeah.
it's been life changing. It's been life changing to go to Sedona and meet you there and meet all these other people that have become my soul tribe, and to really uncover a whole new world of things that I never thought was possible, and whole healing modalities and new medicines and journeys and Wachuma and
Hmm.
all these beautiful things that I never even knew about, and I wouldn't have known about unless I immersed myself in that tribe and took the bet on myself and spent the money.
Yeah.
So it's been blessed.
So many threads, dude. So many threads. And yeah, first of all, just thank you for sharing this and being vulnerable about this. You know, um, I even struggle with that. You know, we got a camera on and everything, but I still even struggle with feeling confident enough in myself and secure enough in myself to share the things that I've been through and the things that I've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing you share it with so much grace, you know,
Yeah.
and with power in your voice, not like you're not shrinking away from it or being a victim about it. It's like, you know, it's like the voyage is on an amazing vessel, you
Yeah.
know, through like choppy waters. You're not saying, oh no, the tides were getting so rough. You know, you're expressing how crazy it was when you're in that experience, but there's a level of strength with how you relate to it that I
Mm-hmm.
think is rare to see these days.
Two things come up for that. Um, One thing is my friend told me I was like starting to post content online, but I was also nervous about it. And I was kind of victimizing myself and like, oh, this is so hard. And he was like, dude, nobody has your perspective in life. Nobody has had your experiences. You can say this to any human. Every human's path is unique. And he was like, if you don't share it, that's selfish.
Hmm.
It is selfish for you not to share your story and be vulnerable about it, because there is for sure at least one other person out there who could benefit from hearing your journey.
Yeah.
And so for me to not share that, like I'm not doing my part to the human race, and that's just not an option. So sharing it is essential.
Hmm.
The second thing is victimizing the story. I would actually do that until 3 weeks ago. Before I left Hawaii to go to Peru on this men's pilgrimage, I was journaling and I was reflecting on my day. And that morning, I was at this coffee shop ordering a coffee. I was talking to the lady, and she was like, "Yeah, it's like, where are you moving?" I told her I had a journey planned, and I was like, "Well, I'm moving to New Mexico." And I didn't like this, like, oh, it's gonna be a bummer.
Okay.
And I didn't notice at the time, but she was like, "Oh, I'm sure it's gonna be so fun." And later I'm journaling and I'm like, why did I like victimize that choice that I made out of my own sovereignty? Why did
Right.
I do that? And then I started looking at my life and the way I would tell my story to people, and I'm like, holy fuck, I've been speaking in a way that is probing other people to validate my pain, and it's victimizing everything.
Right.
And if I don't do that, then nobody will validate my pain and it won't be worth it. So even if I'm going through a period of immense peace and beauty, I'll find a way to extract some pain and
Uh-huh.
say, oh, I'm actually suffering, because then it'll be worth it. And I think this is a thing a lot of men do, especially, but also people in the victim archetype, which is, in my opinion, most of the world. And I realized that, and the second I journaled it, I'm like, never again. Never again. No fucking way. I'm not giving my power to that. Fuck that.
Mm.
And ever since journaling that, no more victim. It's not a thing anymore. It's not an option.
It's what's so interesting too is it's such a subtle thing that you notice.
Super subtle.
It's super subtle.
But it opened up the doorway to everything else I'd been doing. It was just like this small little key.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look at this world that you've been completely unconscious to in your shadow. And
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful to hear. I mean, I think you could use victim things for the rest of your life.
for sure.
So many people do, and you know, with much less of a crazy experience than you've had, they could, you know, people are milking the victim, or someone cut me off on the road, you know, just
Yeah.
finding anything.
Yeah.
Um, And that's one of the things I respect the most in this life is that desire to transform, that desire to change.
Mm.
You know, I think in my best moments, when I look back at myself and I'm like, "Fuck yeah, Ari! Like I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you did." It's when I've made decisions like that, when I've chosen to tell myself the truth and really look at something and be like, "Is this really serving us or not?" And deciding to let it go and choose a higher potential.
Mm.
Um, and I don't always do that. I think I more often than not fail at that.
Mm.
And there's these moments where, maybe for weeks or for months, there'll be a voice in my head saying, like, buddy, this isn't what we need to be doing. Like, we know better than this. And I'm just like, nah, like, I'm going to stay on this thing. And, I think there are modalities and methods that help that better part of me win, that higher part of me win. You mentioned journaling. I think just bringing awareness to it has helped me a lot. I do voice memos,
Nice.
but then I'll synthesize the voice memo and I'll notice, oh, okay, I'll start to see patterns. Of course, psychedelic work, the mushroom has been the path for me, but going in there, I feel like I just get so much more awareness as to what's been going on. And, it's like truth serum. Like I just get to look at the things in my life and be like, oh, like I've been saying this story, but my body's been saying a different story. And now I'm feeling that, like I've been saying, I trust this situation, or I'm saying that this situation is great. But the whole time my body has been really worried because it's been seeing signs that I'm not actually safe or this is actually right for me.
Yep.
And we've been ignoring that because we needed that narrative to be right. And other people were validating that narrative. And everyone was clapping when I was saying that narrative. But my body actually is feeling unsafe. It's feeling like this isn't the place for me. I gotta, how do I remedy those two perspectives? So I guess, yeah, just on the note of practices and modalities and alchemy, I think, we have about 10 minutes left. I'd be really interested to hear if you were to have, 17-year-old Max, 19-year-old Max sitting between us on the couch right now, and you were trying to give him a masterclass in 10 minutes of like, all right, buddy, here are the most salient things that I learned, the few most important, whether it's mindset shifts, whether it's practices, whatever feels in your system like the most important things.
Yeah.
To catalyze his transformation and growth.
Yeah.
What would you tell him?
I think the biggest thing and the first thing is don't step into the paradigm of making other people liking you synonymous with you liking yourself. Because I would consistently surrender who I was and my authentic expression to some creation that was not me, that was intentionally made with trying to get other people's validation, trying to fit into this friend group, and trying to do this thing. And that, the way I see it, is it's just my ego stepping farther and farther away from my soul, farther and farther away from who I really am. So definitely don't make liking other people liking you synonymous with me liking myself. That's where you fuck up royally. And it aligns with what Aubrey was speaking about. The second thing is the pain teacher. Your pain is your friend.
This is Paul Chek's.
Yes, the pain teacher. If you have pain, especially emotional pain, specifically emotional pain, don't run from it, because then that's like the universe trying to tell you a secret about yourself, and you're like, I don't want to fucking hear it. I don't want to learn about myself. No, I just want to keep walking on my path. It's like, fuck, that you're missing the whole point. So if I'm feeling pain and I'm 16, instead of going and smoking or drinking, spend some time with myself, ideally in nature, in the container of the womb of Mother Earth.
Real shit.
And feel it as much as I can.
Feel it.
Without labeling it, just feel it.
Without letting stories come up around what it is, what it means, just the actual embodied experience of that discomfort, suffering, agitation.
Exactly. It's letting my heart drive, not my mind or my body. So if I were in a car as a vessel, most of us in the Western world, our mind is driving, our body's in shotgun, and our heart is in the fucking back row. What instead needs to happen is I need to put my heart in the front seat driving, my mind in the passenger, and my body in the back. Or maybe sometimes body in the back as well. Mind and body. It just depends on the situation. But heart needs to always be driving, in my opinion.
What does that mean to have the heart drive?
It means living from the space of love. It means living from a space of embodiment. Because a lot of us can intellectualize these concepts and talk about them all we want. but embodying them is a completely different thing.
Completely different thing.
And I only discovered that in Sedona at Fit for Service. That was the first time I'd embodied any of the teachings I actually was speaking about. So letting your heart drive and actually feeling into your intelligence system. I like to call it the intelligence system, not the nervous system, because nervous is who wants to be nervous. You know? And my friend coined that, not myself.
Who?
Tyler. His name's Tyler. I was in Peru with him. And so tapping into the body from the space of my heart, which is not gonna fucking judge anything. It's not conditional. It's an unconditional space. Oh, I'm feeling some pain in my left knee. Cool. Let me feel into it some more.
That's interesting.
You know?
Because the body does hold polarity.
For sure.
The body is averse. It has desire. It has aversion.
And if you approach it from the mind,
it has pain.
Mm-hmm.
And the mind has categorization.
Yeah.
Right. It has concepts, and
Mhm.
concepts only exist as the opposite
Exactly.
of something else.
Exactly.
Right.
You need the polarity.
You need the polarity for anything to have meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
But if you come from the place of the heart, there's no judgment. It's unconditional. So you're just,
That's where the body and the mind meet.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's where those polarities are harmonized.
The center.
It's the center.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Exactly. And it's so much harder. So much harder said than done.
So much harder said than done.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep the heart open because it requires, to me, it requires strength and surrendering at the same time. It requires strength to surrender, because surrender means I might feel something that's beyond my capacity or bigger than my story, right? I think that's the thing about the heart is real heart intelligence, real heart openness, living from the heart. It requires you to be a much bigger being, you know? And I think in some ways it strains every other part of your being. You know, I think a lot about the chakras as a framework of how to understand our kind of layered mind, right? And if you think about the 3 chakras below the heart and the 3 chakras above the heart, they all have to surrender something when you lead from the heart, right? The body might have to surrender health sometimes. You might have to stay up an extra hour because someone's crying. You may have to, push yourself further than you would otherwise. You might have to just simply be more disciplined and not eat as much or whatever it is. There's sacrifices the body, like the health, the first chakra, survival has to make. There's certainly sacrifices you have to make to desire. Maybe the heart doesn't actually care about the aversion as much as you do. Maybe it doesn't actually want the addictive desire as much as you do, right? And so it requires a letting go and sometimes also stepping into aversion.
What's coming up for me is when you symphonize the mind and the body, then you start living from the heart. That's the doorway to the heart. So when your mind is like, okay, I know this is good for me, I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to eat these greens. I'm going to go lift this weight because I know it's good for me. And your body's like, fuck yeah, I know that's good for me. Then it's like, bling, and then you open up the heart. So that seems to me like the doorway.
That's super interesting.
But, for example, I like to overeat. I like to eat when I'm stressed. That's living from my mind. I'm not actually hungry, but I like the mouth pleasure because it makes me think I'm okay. It makes me think in the illusion that I'm actually comfortable, which I'm not. And my body's like, fuck, quit putting that shit inside me. Fuck, it's disgusting. Out of harmony, not living from the heart. So this and this harmonize, and when they harmonize, it meets in the middle for the heart.
I love that. Yeah. I really love that framework. Yeah, I used to have a more like kind of linear layered perspective about the chakras, and now I'm thinking it's more actually like the mind has to descend, the body has to arise, and they have to harmonize, and then it's actually when they're harmonized that we can connect with others into the meshwork. It's not just about blasting off myself out of the body away from things. It's actually about body activated, mind descended, right? Like God coming down, matter rising up, harmonizing into compassionate relationality and service to the collective, and then the other ones who are on that same frequency coming together and harmonizing as a meshwork, like a beehive. But a beehive with more archetypes. That's what's interesting about humans. We have so many archetypes. Bees have like 5. It's like queen, drone, warrior.
Simple system.
And they're so amazing. But there's a reason that we have like Talk to a podcast and iPhones, and they have
bees aren't podcasting.
They're not making fucking
they're not podcasting
tracks. Maybe they are. And they of course have awakened crazy awakened wisdom. But I think that's a good start to our first first conversation here,
Part
at least
one.
digitally.
Yeah.
Thank you for your vulnerability and for what you shared. And I know this is the start of my journey, your journey. I mean, it's a new journey every day.
Life a day is what they say.
Yeah, but I'm excited to continue to play with you. I know you're going to be bouncing around. I'll be here for a bit, but I think there's a lot we can do around, you know, helping the young masculine grow up. I can't necessarily teach someone who's 45, but
Right.
maybe I have something figured out that's interesting.
Maybe
but
that's who we don't have to teach. Maybe we have to teach the younger generation.
yeah, like there are gates that we have walked through. There are doors that thresholds we've already crossed. We're not 18 anymore. We're not 16 anymore. And I think we've done a good job at kind of alchemizing those experiences or having wisdom about what we experienced at this point. So maybe all we have to do is just help the person behind us. If we just keep doing that.
Take notes from the front, preach to the back.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think there's a lot for us to play around with there. I've had some visions recently as I've stepped into ceremony space about what kind of my soul is asking from me or what it wants to do. And I saw some things about showing up for the young masculine and stepping into that father figure, stepping into that role. Not father figure for everybody, but father figure just for the ones below me, that archetype of the father.
Yep.
Who a guide, the compassionate mentor, for the next gen. And it frustrates me when I look at Andrew Tate or when I look at, I think Andrew Tate's saying some things that some people need to hear for sure. And there's a layer of our being that like he's reigniting that I think's really been forgotten. Like the ego focus, like there's something about having a healthy ego and like going towards your shit. I think he wraps up a lot of other bullshit and he's not in good relationship with the feminine. He's not in good relationship with the other beings. He's not in good relationship with a ecosystemic God as opposed to a monolithic God. Anyways, it frustrates me looking at some of these male archetypes and male figures that are holding such a small part of the story, such a limited perspective. And what would it look like to share a masculine perspective that is in harmony with the feminine, is in harmony with young and old, is in harmony with light and dark, is in harmony with the other beings and relatives that we have on the planet, is in harmony with a larger unfolding of consciousness that eventually will shred and decimate any modicum of ego or any modicum of individuality and separateness that we have. An awakened God's eye view perspective that includes all levels and all beings and all types and a shamanic awakened full blown kind of
encompassing the polarities,
integrated both and masculine expression. What does that look like? How do we create a container or a conveyor belt or just share breadcrumbs to help ourselves find our way there, and as we learn things, drop those nuggets for our brothers and for our sons.
Yeah, no doubt. Good one.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
More soon.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. We'll do like a part 20.
Yeah, for sure.
Just the whole way until we die.
I think so,
Fuck it.
Thank you for joining us. Please let us know in the comments or reach out. I'll link Max's stuff in the description. And thank you for coming by and experiencing this with us.
I'm going to the super really quick.
Yes, sir.